All right. So most of you in the room probably already know what Amaze is. Amaze is a web resource that provides funny and interesting, medically accurate information for young folks ages 10 through 14 in the areas of sexual health. It is a web-based video series that includes not only videos, but also support for teachers in the ways of talking points, questions that you can use to facilitate with your groups, as well as opportunities to create playlists and a variety of other things. Most of our videos do live on YouTube, but you can also go to amaze.org and access the videos there as well. And as you can see on the slide, Amaze is here to help. We are here to help take the awkwardness out of sex ed, to be able to talk about topics that are relevant to young people, but also informative and entertaining in ways that engage how they think about the world. And so we're very excited to have such an amazing support network, an amazing community of folks just like you who value what it is that we produce. And so these are just some of our videos that we have. And if anything at this point, anything you have a question about in terms of if there's a video out here, the likeliness is that we do have one. At this point, I think we're at roughly almost 150 different videos at this point, and we have well over 40 million views that we've had since the beginning of our journey on this about 5 years ago. So we're very excited about that. We also have an international division of Amaze. We have not only folks who have enjoyed what we do in the US, but all around the world, we have folks who are not only using our videos on their ministries of health websites or using them with their own classrooms, but they're also translating a lot of our videos. So our videos have been translated into Spanish and Xhosa and Greek and a variety of other different languages all around the world for those who would like to share them with their young people as well. And so this year, what we're doing, yes, Colombia, yes, we have them all over pretty much. And so this year, what we're doing, we decided to go a little bit further. A lot of folks in here, you may know that last fall we did our inaugural Amaze Educators Conference, which was the first time ever that we had folks from all over the world talking about how we could use Amaze to make the classroom better. A lot of folks in here already know how to do that, but we knew that there was still a critical mass of folks who, knew the videos, but they weren't quite clear of how they can be used in their classroom. And so we had that, and then we decided, how can we build on that momentum? We had nearly thousands of folks who registered for that, and we wanted to build on that momentum. So we decided that this year, we wanted to give you a chance to talk to each other, right? So I've been in the classroom before. Some of the other folks on the educator team have been in the classroom before, but because we're not active K-12 educators, we thought it made more sense to give you the opportunity to talk to folks who are using these videos in real time. We can give you these ideas, but coming from someone who's doing this work in real time is a much more effective way for you to think practically about how to utilize our videos. And so again, this is our first ever Amaze Educator Talk, where we invite an educator in who's currently using the videos to talk about how they're using the videos and to share from their perspectives. So it highlights the best in K-12 sexuality and sexual health education, and it provides peer-to-peer learning. So our guest speaker is someone who's just like you, who's in the classroom right now, as you all have seen, or you've all had a chance to talk with her, and she's going to share what that experience has been like for her. Now, what's awesome about this is that she's amazing, but Mrs. Anderson is not special in terms of getting access to this opportunity. We put out a call for folks to apply if they're interested in doing this. And we got folks from all over. I think some of the folks in this room are going to be presenting later on this year. And so if you're looking at this at any point and you think, oh, I've got a video that I would love to talk about, we'd love to have you. We anticipate doing this about 4 times a year, where we invite a new teacher to come and talk about how they're using our videos. And there is a small prize package that comes with being selected to present. So definitely think about it if it's something that you want to do. Our next presentation will be held on Wednesday, May 26th, and you can see the times there for your respective time zone. We'd love to have you participate. And then again, once the call goes out for more presenters, we'd love to have you consider presenting for a video as well. And so today's speaker is none other than Mrs. Susan Anderson, again, who is, we are super excited to have her here. I'm going to really quickly just read a little bit of her bio, and then I'm going to turn it over and let her take it away. So if you'll give me just a second, I've got to pull it up from a different space because I had it on my screen right here and had to change it up just a little bit. Hold on just a second. Because I'm sharing my screen, it's a little bit of a technical thing to get to where I had her bio up. Oh, nope, that's not what we want to do. Oh.
And Tracy, don't go to too much trouble. It doesn't matter to me.
No, we definitely want to give you your flowers and acknowledge because our guest speaker has done some amazing things. So we definitely want to honor that. Hold on just one moment. Okay, so Susan Anderson is a middle school grade health teacher for the McHenry School District in McHenry, Illinois. So again, shouts out to the Midwest. She is a national board certified teacher who has been doing this work for over 20 years. Mrs. Anderson received her bachelor's in health education from Illinois State University and her master's degree in curriculum and instruction from Northern Illinois University. She was one of the first teachers in the state of Illinois to be certified by the national board, to have national board certification and to have that certification be renewed in 2019. She is also the 2017 recipient of the Bill Burke Award in Teaching. And last but not least, she'll tell us more when she's not in school. We already found out what the teacher for her son. She can be found with her husband and 2 children, ages 12 and 10, also living in Illinois. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Anderson. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me. Thanks for that lovely introduction. I'm going to go ahead and hopefully pull up my PowerPoint without any problems. So let me go ahead. Of course, it is. Oh, how do I move this top bar so it gets me to my...
Which bar are you looking at? There you go.
Okay. You guys, I'm not used to Zoom. We don't use Zoom at school. We use Google Meets. So please bear with me during the presentation and all the technical stuff. It's pretty much the same, but it's slightly different. So I apologize. But hello, I am Susie Andreessen. It is nice to know that some of you are here. So hello. Here's a little bit about me. This is my 20th year teaching. I have my master's degree, as Tracy had said, in curriculum and instruction. I did achieve my national board certification. That was back in 2010. It was it was the most difficult, most challenging thing teaching-wise I've ever had to do. I don't know if anybody out there is national board certified, but it is definitely challenging, yet very much rewarding. So I did achieve the renewal back in 2019, and then I teach at a Chicago suburban middle school with about 800 students. And then here's my little family there. So for those Wisconsin folks, this was taken at Blue Harbor. If anybody is familiar with that area, we love going up there. Okay, so here's a little bit about sex ed at my school. The demographics, we are primarily white Caucasian here, about 74%, 20% Hispanic, 1% Black population, and about overall 34% are low income. With sex ed here at my school in McHenry, we teach the kids every 7 weeks. So, or I should say every 7 weeks, we get a new batch of kids. So we teach for 7 weeks and then we get a new group. Teach for 7 weeks, we get a new group. So if it's really quick, it's really hard to get a lot of information into them in that short period of time. So I'm not sure how you guys are at your schools, how much time you have with the kids, you know, whether it's a trimester or a semester or weeks at a time perhaps, but that's how it works at our school. My school also, we have our sex ed program is abstinence based, not abstinence only. So it's always amazing. Again, I don't know what it's like at your school, but when I just introduced the word abstinence, maybe 1 or 2 students in my 8th grade classes has even heard of it and knows that it exists. So, but it's always shocking and surprising to me how many have never even heard of abstinence before. But Amaze just put out a video explaining what abstinence is. And I believe, Tracy, it's a newer video because I hadn't seen it recently. But so I'm excited to introduce what abstinence is with the Amaze video there. We also talk about the reproductive systems. We talk about sexually transmitted infections, healthy versus unhealthy relationships, along with consent. We do also talk a lot about dating, and I obviously didn't put it up here, I'm not sure why, but dating is a big chunk of healthy relationships. So normally when we're in class, I have them do like a speed dating event, which is so great to learn how to communicate with each other. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that now, but hopefully we'll be able to work on that some more. So this is the video that I will be showing in just a little bit, saying yes or no, what is consent? Like I said, I use a ton of the Amaze videos during the healthy relationships. I use a lot during STIs. And some of them, even as you read the titles of them, they kind of make me giggle inside. But I'm like, oh, dang, like that is very upfront. It's very realistic. It's very much how kids talk, right? So, but I think that's why the kids like them. Like that's why my students enjoy them, because it's very real. But ultimately, the video that I'm going to show today is a conversation between 2 sisters about their dating relationships and the challenges that they both have. Wondering, is this normal? Is this okay? And then the advice that the older sister provides ultimately. So it's about an 8-minute clip. I would say it's kind of a lengthier one for Amaze. Normally they're not quite as lengthy, but I like it and that's why I show it. Okay, so the rationale for this lesson, like why did I put it together? I really have noticed that, I don't know if you guys have Aaron's Law in your curriculum, but when we have Aaron's Law come in, our speaker for that, she'll talk about consent and empowerment when she talks about sexual abuse. And I realized then how foreign consent is to my students. Like they have no idea what it is. They don't see it in the media. So the media rarely mentions consent. They don't talk about it. They don't show it being done. So no wonder it's foreign to them, right? Because they don't know what it is and they don't see it happening. So we have a lot of our education here in 8th grade is based on normative education. I often will say when I have my 8th graders for the 7-week term, I'll say, if there is one thing that you get out of this class over the next 7 weeks, it's that, you know, as of right now, most teens are not having sex. Right. And then we look at the data, like where did I pull that data from? And we look at it because just having that knowledge will help empower them to make some of those healthy choices in the future. But I feel like this all goes together, right? Like am I going to choose to date? And then what does a healthy relationship look like? Is consent a part of that? Is it not? So there's so much to talk about with it, but we really focus on normative education, asking like, do most teens have sex? And starting to date, like because they're starting to date now, they need to be aware of consent and they need to be knowledgeable about what it is and how important it is. Because again, like I said, they just don't see it. So So that's our job. We need to educate them and let them know this is what is expected and how you should value your body. So yeah, it's such a good conversation, and the videos do a great job helping them kind of warm up to what can be really sensitive, awkward, uncomfortable topics, especially at the 8th grade level. So this is the first time some of them are hearing any of these terms from a teacher, right, in a classroom. So so the Amaze videos really do a nice job like breaking the ice a little bit. So I just finished here by saying that it's crucial that we need to educate about consent being a part of healthy relationships, and the Amaze videos do a great job with that. So this is the scope and sequence is kind of just very general. I didn't put too much detail in here. We do talk about healthy versus unhealthy relationship characteristics. I'm not sure if anybody uses this website, the loveisrespect.org. It's really awesome and informative. So in this website, this is how I start off the unit. We look at defining on the website healthy, unhealthy, and abusive relationships. They have a relationship spectrum that we look at. So it gives examples of situations, and then we as a class decide if that's healthy, is that an unhealthy relationship, or is that an abusive relationship? So so that's very worthwhile if you're looking for like informative education there. They do also talk about consent on the website, so that is also there. This is another site that we use, joinonelove.org. You might have seen commercials for this. I think the Super Bowl was one of their first commercials that they had, and they're really powerful. So if you have a chance to check that out, they do a great job also with differentiating between healthy and unhealthy relationships, looking at characteristics. Like here's a characteristic, here's a blurb, an example about that characteristic, and then we just move on to the next one. So it's really easy to understand. They have it laid out very, very well, and they have very little like cartooned video clips, but they're not nearly as informative as the Amaze ones, but they do have a lot of information there. So yeah, and these are sites that I never used before I was starting to look into talking about and teaching about consent more often. All right, so before the video clip, we'll show that in just a second. These are a couple of questions I have my students think about before I show the clip. So I explained we're going to be talking about consent. I do ask the class, like, does anybody already know what consent is? Usually we'll have a couple hands that go up, but not nearly all of them. I have them think about another word for consent. I think I have them realistic. Do you think they did a good job making it realistic? Is consent part of a healthy or unhealthy relationship, like when you see that in the video? And then I have them think about what are some examples of asking for consent in a relationship, and is it healthier to ask for consent or to apologize when you didn't ask? So yeah, these two questions lead to some really good conversation that I'll talk about after the video. Okay, so we should be good. Tracy, this is good for me to start showing this here, or?
Yep, it should be fine.
Okay, all right, so let me know if the sound doesn't work, but we should be good.
Yep, we hear it.
What do you want?
I couldn't help hearing some seriously dragging feet on the way to your room. What's up, dude?
Could you keep a secret from mom and dad?
What are big sisters for?
There's a boy in my class who asked me out 2 weeks ago.
Whoa, you have a boyfriend now? You're growing up so fast these days.
Shut up. I'm already 13. And you're like 4 years older than me.
Okay, so what's the problem? Does he like stink or something?
No way, are you kidding me? Give me some credit here.
Well, not too bad, sis. Oh, what kind of jersey is he wearing now?
Ice hockey. It's ice hockey. Now give me back my phone.
Huh.
No, don't look.
Hold the phone, Pip. Is he pressuring you?
It started on Monday. He keeps trying to get me to go a little bit further when we're kissing, but it's too much and I'm not sure what to do.
Whoa. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Have you been taught about consent yet?
Well, yeah. I mean, a little bit at least.
Even if you don't give him a reply, that's not considered consent. He can't touch you without your consent, period. He's got to explicitly ask you, and you have to respond with a yes. Otherwise, he's breaking your trust and, the law.
Oh, I didn't know that much.
Look, if he's pressuring you, that totally isn't consent.
Oh?
Heck no. That's called coercion. If he coerces you into doing something you're not comfortable with, that's considered rape.
Really? Even if he's my boyfriend?
It doesn't matter, boyfriend or not. But if he's your boyfriend, he should totally care about what you want. He should care as much about what you do and don't want as he cares about himself. If you don't want to go any further than kissing, you don't have to, no matter who says what. You both have to actively want to do that kind of stuff, Also, the second drugs or alcohol are added into the mix, it's always a no-go. If either of you are high or drinking, you cannot consent, period.
That makes a lot of sense. I guess I just don't talk about it much since it's, kind of awkward. All that sexual stuff.
Don't get me wrong, that kind of stuff can be a really positive experience. It can be a lot of fun with the right person, if you both want it. But they don't get to decide for you. And hey, you don't get to decide for them either. It's okay to not feel ready yet, too. A lot of communication needs to happen between both of you.
Communication? That makes sense. It's just so hard to talk to him, though, when he's so upfront about it.
Oh, jeez. That's no good. He's so pushy. How old is this guy anyways?
He's in the 9th grade. Only a year ahead of me.
Whoa. Since when are you into older guys?
Come on, Eve.
You know I'm just poking fun. Come on.
Huh. Do you know about the laws of consent, Pip?
Well, a little bit. Kinda.
Makes sense you don't. It actually varies state to state, but it's basically a law stating when a person is old enough in the eyes of the law to make the choice to even consent to sexual contact in the first place.
Wait, there's laws about that?
Sure are. It's different in every state, but you could totally Google it. Like, for example, here in New York State, the official age of consent is 17. But if a person is between the age of 13 and 16, they can consent with someone who's up to 4 years older than them. So I guess Steve is off the hook for that at least.
That makes one stupid thing he's done right.
It's alright, you'll learn in time. Heck, I dated a couple duds before I found my boyfriend. Totally worth it though.
Oh, is that the one with the bright blue car? I always see you sneaking off into.
Pip, I'm keeping quiet about your boyfriend, so cut me some slack here. There he is. Pretty hot, huh?
You're dating a total rocker wannabe.
He is such a gentleman and a sweetheart. And he actually listens to me too. You can't get more quality than that.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, that reminds me. Sexual contact doesn't start and end with big sex, right?
Huh? What do you mean?
Well, your boyfriend's got to get your consent for any kind of physical activity. I mean, oral, vaginal, and anal sex are all super obvious, but he also needs your explicit consent for activities like kissing, hugging, and touching.
Whoa, seriously?
Yep. Oh, also, you can change your mind at any time, for any reason,
Wait, like, even in the middle of doing it?
Yep, it doesn't matter. If you suddenly want to stop for any reason at all, your partner has to listen to you. And, you gotta listen to them too. Respect and communication go both ways.
Oh, wow. That actually kind of makes me feel better in a way.
I'm glad I could talk to you a little bit about it then. I know it's a super, super awkward topic, but if I can help you feel a little bit better, that's what big sisters are for.
You mean you're not just good for taking the last cookie out of the cabinet or leaving your shoes right in front of the door, so I always trip on my way inside?
Hey, big sisters can be about a lot of things at once, It's called multitasking.
Come on, Eve. Oh, it's Steve. Ugh, I am so done with boys.
Let Steve be salty. He'll be okay. Speaking of boys, there's my ride.
Whatever, I'm just gonna play video games.
You can always talk to me if this guy's being too pushy. No matter what happens, it's really not your fault. And you can talk to mom and dad. Maybe you have a cool teacher or something. Really, any adult you trust can help out.
Okay, I got it, Eve. Don't keep your super hot boyfriend waiting for you.
Oh, come on. He's totally dreaming.
Who does that?
All right, I just realized I didn't mute myself. I hope that wasn't a problem. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys have ever seen that video before or if you've watched it before, but it's a really great intro to our healthy relationships and consent. We all really like that one. My 8th graders really like it. So after the video, when we're talking about these questions, yeah, they have a lot of good things to say. They're always like flabbergasted by how real it seems and modern and up to date. So that's why we like to use them. So we do spend some time talking about these questions. And then their student reactions, again, they love that it's realistic. They are interested because it's a different take on what they're ever used to seeing. Like they don't see this in the movies. They don't see asking for consent in TV shows. We don't hear about it in music or songs. So you often have those light bulb moments when the students will say like, oh yeah, like I never thought about that, or that makes sense. So I do give them the example of, is it easier to ask for consent or ask for forgiveness if you did something that, I use the example of just like holding hands, right? That maybe, I don't know how many of you are huggers, but I am a hugger. And when I started teaching about consent a couple of years ago, I realized that some people are not huggers, right? Some of my students, that if they would come to me with a problem or they would have something that just hurt my heart and it was emotional or it was sad, and I would react by asking them or, by giving them a hug. But now through the years, I realized, nope, I have to ask if it's okay if I give them a hug. So I'll say like, can I give you a hug? And most of the time they'll be okay with it, but sometimes they're like, and then we talk about how doesn't mean yes. So that's another way that we bring consent into that. So yes. So anyway, what I was saying was, let's say that they're dating. So we use this example in class after the video, and I'll just say like, let's say that you and Johnny are walking around town and all of a sudden he goes to reach for your hand and it made it so awkward and so uncomfortable. And he didn't ask if he could hold your hand first. So would you rather, like asking for consent, do you think it's easier to ask for consent? Should Johnny have said, hey, can I hold your hand? I really feel close to you right now. Can I hold your hand? Or is it going to be easier for him to say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, right? It's just more awkward. And the kids always say like, oh, that would be so awkward if you went for somebody's hand and they didn't want it. And it made them feel uncomfortable. So that is a really good like jumping point for how they realize how important it is to ask for consent, and it seems awkward. And the students will say that too, like, oh my gosh, like it seems so weird. Like, can I hold your hand? But we just all agree and we say like, yeah, but isn't it better to ask if you could hold your hand rather than say, oh, I'm so sorry I made you uncomfortable. So, and I also remind them it's awkward because we don't hear it. But the more that we do it, the more that it will seem natural. So, and they always agree with this. It's such a good conversation to have. They feel really empowered when they're done watching that video, that it's not just them. Like, oh, I didn't realize that this happens. Like this typical conversation is just that. It's pretty typical when you're dating. And they really feel empowered when they realize that this is your body. Like nobody's allowed to touch it without asking your permission. Really, that's what it comes down to, even when you're dating somebody. Because I think middle school students, I don't know about what it's like with you guys, but they just get that assumption that like middle school equals sexual activity, like middle school dating, like equals being sexually active. And I reassure them, like, that's not what dating is about. So you could be in a dating relationship and not be sexually active with anybody. And that is totally fine, right? And then, yeah, we have a lot of cute kids that will say, I didn't realize that I had to do that. But then we say, yes, you do. Like in today's world, I think the Me Too movement in Hollywood a couple years ago, I mean, that was really like what is that called? Like the jumping board or I don't know if I have that phrase right. To having a good conversation, like talking about this out loud. So if I had to do it all over again, I would probably put them into some breakout groups because of the sensitivity of the topic. Maybe some students would be better off with a small group sharing their thoughts. I would also think to provide scenarios for them to discuss, like when is consent needed? And when is it not? And then even role play. I would let them choose their groups for that because that could obviously be kind of awkward, but role playing this would be, I think that would be great. And even, like, do you have to ask for consent when you're giving a hug? And do you have to ask for consent with something like holding hands? Or what if I just want to like give my date like a little kiss? It's not like we're making out, it's just a little kiss. And then I bring it back to them. Like, I don't know, what do you think? Do you think that you need to ask consent for that? So yeah, and they figure it out very quickly, especially when it's like, this is your body. Like you don't let anybody touch it unless they ask permission and you're okay with that. So it's seriously some really good discussion, you guys, that if you haven't used any of these clips, they're really good conversation starters. I also thought movie clips from scenes not asking for consent. So again, I don't know where you guys are at, if Cobra Kai is a big thing where you are, but like everybody's watching it where we're at in like the Chicago area. At least all my middle schoolers seem to watch it and my own boys at home. So anyway, there are like sexual scenes in there with young people. And I will point out like, oh, did they ask for consent? Like, like, cause you don't see it. So I'm really hoping that movies, now that this is a big thing in society, will start to take a good turn and start including consent more. The Outsiders, my 7th grader is, I think they're done watching that, but they have read the book. So we watched the movie at home as well. And I had never seen The Outsiders from the 80s before, but that's a great talking point too, or Grease. Like if I mentioned Grease when I'm teaching this in class, how they're at the drive-in theater and Danny and Sandy are dating and then he puts his arm around her. But I'm like, whoop, nope. Like he didn't ask for consent. So I would use some movie clips, some forms of media, and I think they would just be really floored with, oh my gosh, like, yeah, he should have asked or she should have asked and whatnot. Okay, and then I would also just reiterate to them that the more we practice asking for consent, the less awkward it would be. Really, that's, I think, the bottom line, right? I also would assign different Amaze videos about consent to small groups, and then they can figure out how they would like to teach that consent video to the class. So I thought that would be, because there's so many, actually, Here are some other videos from Amaze on consent. I thought if each group was in charge of teaching about one of these videos, that would be a good way to get a lot of different aspects of consent to everybody in the class there. So so I think that's it. That's really what, yep, that's it. That's what I do with that consent video, and I really love it. It is great for conversation. So just to get them talking, like I said, it's a good conversation starter. So that's that.
Excellent job. Thank you so much, Susie. Thank you so much. The chat has been phenomenal. We've got folks who are sharing examples. We also had some folks share examples of scenes that did include consent. So they've got a lot. Folks here are talking about episodes of The Big Bang. The Big Bang Theory shows a lot of consent violations. But people talked about Frozen and Frozen 2. I guess there are scenes in there that are very explicitly showing consent. So that's good. There's a Love and Basketball is an example here of consent being negotiated. So there's definitely a lot of consensus that yes, being able to show real-time clips in media is very, very important.
Yes, I did. I can't see the chat anymore. Is that right?
Well, you were because you're sharing. So
can I stop sharing?
If you want to, but actually, if you can put up your main screen again, because there were some people who missed your email address, and so we want to make sure that that's up for there.
Yes, and I'm glad. I would love to see those media examples because what was the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? I think it's the second one. There was I was telling Tracy about this. There was such an awesome scene where the two teenagers are in the kitchen and he went in for a kiss and she was all taken back. And she's like, I think she kind of gently pushed him away and said, what'd you do that for? You didn't ask. And I'm like, what? Like, yay, that's consent. That video, I cannot find it on YouTube anymore, unfortunately. So I need to get some additional ones. So that's great if people are putting that in chat.
Yes, awesome. There's also scenes of sex education as well from the show Sex Education on Netflix. So there's lots of different examples. But we're going to go ahead and get into some questions because we know some of the teachers have to leave. Some folks were saying they've got conferences and things to reach for.
Sure.
Glee, I'm sure there's lots of different examples we can definitely pull on from the media to talk about when consent did happen and it was great, and when consent didn't happen and it needed to be negotiated better. But some of the questions that folks have are, how are you, when you're talking to students, how are you defining sex for them? So when you're thinking about that, what's that looking like for them?
Yes. So we talk about sexual activity versus sexual intercourse. I actually have a whole lesson. So we do talk about oral sex. So oral sex and vaginal sex is really at this level, that's all we really talk about, like oral sex versus vaginal sex. And I take time to define it because I'm not naive on the fact that some of my kids will not know what oral sex is. So we define oral sex as mouth and genital contact. And then we describe sexual intercourse as genital and genital contact. So that way it's inclusive. But yeah, so that's what that's how we define it in class. And then I was going to say that I have a whole lesson that we teach because the kids think oral sex is no big deal. They'll say like, oh, oral sex, it's like no big deal. It's what everybody's doing in high school. But no way are we going to have sexual intercourse. So I take the time to really talk about the physical, mental, emotional, social consequences of oral sex. And then we do the same for sexual intercourse. And then it's an amazing light bulb moment when they realize, oh my gosh, all of those are the same consequences. If you take pregnancy out, right? Pregnancy is the exception, but they're all the same. So I love that lesson. That's a really good light bulb moment for them to realize, oh, can people still call you bad names and make fun of you on social media, even if it's just oral sex that they found out you did? They say yes. And can you be distracted if it's just oral sex from school? And yes. So it's, yeah.
So yeah, so it sounds like as well that it's important when thinking about consent too, to think about all of these different types of sex, right? So even if you have maybe students who are a little bit more comfortable in what they're doing sexually, it's about recognizing that yes, maybe you may not feel shame, but it's still important to negotiate
Yes.
consent in whatever
Yes.
it is that you're doing. So even if it's oral sex, even if it's
Yes.
all of these things, which brings me to another question that someone asked about teaching all genders together. Do you have conversations around not only having all the genders learn together, but do you have conversations around same-sex relationships and discussing consent and what that looks like there as well?
Yeah, I don't have, I don't take a lot of time talking about it. I do definitely address the fact that all of these consequences that we talk about can happen with either like with mixed genders, with same genders. So we do talk about that. Yeah, we don't go into a lot of detail at this level with that, but we do discuss the fact that all of these things can happen in any kind of dating relationship with any genders. It's possible for anything.
Gotcha. I also wanted to point out that a lot of folks in the room, they use or they're familiar with Love is Respect and One Love. So they were super excited when you shared those links.
Oh, good.
There is a question in the chat that is just an explanation, if you will, of sharing around anal sex is not in the lessons,
No.
included in your lessons. Is that a policy issue that you deal with, or is that just the exclusion there?
You know, it's not, it's just an exclusion.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I just don't feel like they, at this level, again, like being 12 and 13-ish, I don't think I feel like they're not experimenting with that compared to oral sex more. So I just, again, try to figure out like, what do I hear that they're experimenting with? So that's kind of what I focus on.
Okay.
I'll talk about it. If somebody has a question about it, I address it. But it's not, I don't usually explain it, or we don't like talk about it in
Got it. Yeah. And so, and I appreciate the folks that are saying in the chat, I mean, and it sounds like, I think it raises the point of, as the teacher, barring anything that you have from your school district, you can really take the liberties for yourself to determine what you want your students to learn. But I also want to validate the folks in the chat who are talking about how, you do have some students who may practice anal sex because they perceive it as being easier, that you're less likely to get pregnant, or even just folks who are engaging in anal play because that's what they enjoy, or they're doing it to be experimental. We know developmentally, we know young folks, school-age children try all types of things to be experimental. And so it's important to kind of think about that too, recognizing that, again, depending on what school district you're in, depending on the students that you're working with, you may feel more comfortable or less comfortable. And it's also on you to decide which ones you want to share and not share with your students. Let's see.
Yeah, we're looking for another question there, Tracy. I do want to also mention that with consent, since that's what, like our main focus is here, with consent, I do also educate the kids about how it's okay to change your mind, right? And they often don't realize that, like, if they allowed a long kiss one time, like, it's okay to say, oh, I don't want to do that now. So that's also kind of reassuring to the students that it's okay to have done it once and you were okay with it once, but now you don't want to do it anymore. And that's
and someone is bringing up the fries analogy, which is also awesome. Yes. So there's another question, and I think this might be good. We wanted to keep this around an hour, so we might wrap it up with this last question. There was a question around, are you finding your middle school students care about being healthy? So I'm curious, thinking about, I guess, even with this generation, kind of what are they thinking about? And is this something that even matters to them? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question. I would say generally, yeah, they do care about being healthy. We have a lot of athletes, like a lot of our students are into sports and they play different sports and they're athletic. And I would say generally they value their health. So they do want, and I just love teaching, especially about the healthy relationships, because I mean, these are life skills, right? Like, these are things that they're going to use forever and ever. So yes, to answer the question, I would say there are more that are interested in health skills that are compared to those that are not.
Yes. awesome. Awesome. And I lied because I do see there is one other question that I want to make sure. Oh, a couple other questions. So let's see. The first one is, do you have any suggestions to best engage boys in the conversation around consent and healthy relationships?
Gosh, that's another good question. I wish I had a good answer for you. How to better engage boys? I don't know. Let's think about that. How to better engage boys? Maybe the boys, I don't know. Do you think it would be better to have them as maybe separate them and have like a guy group and then have a girl group and have the guys talk about how they would use consent? And then
yeah, this is
have
one
like
of those things where it will really depend. I will say Answer does have a full online professional development workshop that's just on how to work with boys. What we find is actually segregation is not really the answer.
Okay.
And a lot of that is because a lot of the because we recognize there's all types of gender diversity. So a lot of the topics are in fact things that matter to across genders, right? Like all genders care about menstrual, like they're interested in learning about menstrual cycles. They're interested in learning about testosterone and all of the different things that are a part of children's lived experience, regardless of their gender. But also with boys in particular, we find that while there may be some things that they're really interested, like that's more important to them, in many cases, there's much more intra-gender diversity than there is intergender diversity. So boys are more likely to have differences among other boys than they are to have differences with girls. And so just for the person who asked that specific question, if you're looking for more specific pieces, we would actually encourage you to check out the online professional development workshop that we have at Answer. But if you want to learn some of the basic pieces, including more kinesthetic activities, could be a good way to engage boys. They tend to be, and I want to be careful to not stereotype, because again, there's much more diversity within genders than across. But some of the science tells us that boys and folks who've been kind of groomed under masculinity tend to be more interested in kinesthetic activities. They're less likely to want to sit around and chat, but they are more likely to be engaged with things that get their bodies going, that get them interacting from that lane versus we're going to sit and have a conversation, or we're going to sit and kind of engage with our feelings and those sorts of things. Yeah,
the role plays would be great for them. You're right.
Yeah. Okay, so last question, and then we're going to call it a day. Do you spend all 7 weeks on sexual health? So the consent, relationships, STIs, etc.
Yes, I do. And then we do end with refusal skills. So we talk about, that's kind of the way that we wrap it up. So I mean, there's a lot with sexual health, with consent, the relationships, dating, STIs, that's all part of it. So yes, that's 8th grade health.
Got you. And so if you are in a school district that prioritizes abstinence, we recognize that, some of you may be in districts where you kind of have to talk mostly only about abstinence, or that is kind of the priority, then that's a good way to do that. For folks who are in districts where maybe you have a little bit more flexibility, or folks, they recognize that students are maybe a little bit more active, you can adjust that. And also recognizing that some of you are in districts where maybe 7 weeks is all you have period to talk about health, and so trying to fit sexual health in there can be a challenge. So there's lots of flexibility you might have to engage in. To be clear, this is not meant to be prescriptive. It is meant to be a space to kind of explore all the different ideas. And so with that, I think we are done. Thank you so much. I see someone ask, what was that called again? But I don't exactly remember what it was that you asked me. That you're asking me that maybe
about how to include boys in where to find that on the Amaze.
Yes. So that's actually from Answer, and so you go to Answer's website. We can make all of that available. I also saved the chat, so all the folks who gave us ideas for different scenes that show consent and show the lack thereof, we will make that available to participants as well with this recording. So with that, I'm actually going to shut this down and stop the recording.